Welcome to another episode of Exit Philosophy. He's Mal Romanin. I'm Rich Griffin. And the Blue Jays are leaving on a road trip as we speak to Tampa and Texas, and they're back above 500. We'll get into that situation. But first, I want to talk about the news that everybody's talking about, and that's the Toronto Maple Leafs, after bowing out in the second round, changing their team president, Brendan Shanahan, who had so many shots in the press box and looking at almost head in hand
Yeah.
situation. But Mal, do you think that was the right decision after 9 years for the Leafs to make that move?
I think you didn't have any other decision. I think you could have argued it should have been done many, many years ago. There's just a lack of an ability to adjust. Um, I have no problem with the president getting 9 years. I like that consistency. But when that 9 years is the same movie every year, I think you have to question some people's sanity around the joint. So I like Shanahan, but it's exactly kind of the same product with little minor tweaks here and there. And in a situation you could argue you knew the answer to 5 years ago if you wanted to. So I think it was time for sure, for sure.
You think he got as much rope as he did because of his reputation as a player, as a solid two-way player, as somebody who looked good in a suit and never got them past the second round, nevertheless?
I think I don't know if it's that trivial. I think he did a lot of tremendous things to bring the organization back to respectability. I think people are forgetting the kind of mess the Leafs were in before he got there. So it's not all negative. I mean, there was a real change in the way they operated, a real professionalism that he brought to the table. So I think there's value in that. And you're always hoping that next year, somehow, as the year, things change, right? It just never happened.
Speaking of 9 year presidents, how about Mark Shapiro in a similar situation, taking over a team that in 2016 made the playoffs, 2017 and 18. It was clearly on the way down when that 2016 team made the playoffs because they were all veterans, a lot on expiring contracts. Star players were aging out. Do you think that the Shanahan example is something for Rodgers to consider in terms of their own presidency?
I think every situation's different. But I do think you can reasonably ask where the organization is today and where it is when you take over, and are we better? Are we worse? And there's a lot to discuss there, right? I mean, as far as some things that have been done off the field, it's hard to argue what's been invested and what's been invested through ownership, and obviously Mark's been a big part of that. I think it's fair to criticize what's happened on the field and the general malaise and vibe that exists within this organization from, an entertainment perspective and the future of it. I think it's a different environment, but yeah, I think everybody kind of has a due date at some point, and a fresh voice needs to be heard. And the conversation is fair in the Blue Jay world as well. I think I think that's something you need to look at for sure.
How about this comparison? Vlad is Austin Matthews, Bo is Mitch Marner, and George Springer is John Tavares.
Yeah, the only difference is in hockey, and this is the problem. You're stuck half the time. Like you've kind of been stuck with these guys in hockey. In baseball, you've chosen to do this. So yeah, I think that's a fair comparison on a lot of levels. But in baseball, you can pivot a lot better. You can abort and reverse direction. Hockey, once you kind of commit those hard caps where your options are limited, change what you can do. So it's even more critical when you make commitments to big players. Now, the Blue Jays are kind of stuck with the first baseman. I mean, that's the wrong term. I mean, obviously they've chosen to do that, but that's an enormous contract. But yeah, I think those are some fair comparisons. It's just baseball. You can choose to change that if you want.
Well, there's not, I mean, I know you're not a fan of salary caps and
No.
that's probably a lot of what you're talking about is it's tougher to make moves with high price guys in hockey than it is in baseball because there's always someone willing to take that contract in baseball because there's no cap. Um, but I don't think that, I think, I mean, we've both discussed it a lot about Vlad Guerrero Jr., and they're not stuck with him. They chose to ride him. I mean, we'll talk later about how long that could happen for a 14-year extension on a 1 year.
Yeah, and that's why I said wrong choice of words there. They definitely. I guess what I'm saying is the contract's so huge that that's one of those you can't just probably choose to move if you wanted to. You've made the decision that you're gonna ride with this player, and that's fine. Like, but whereas other guys, it's easier to move off of. That's what I meant. But yeah, I mean, it's a long contract for sure. When you make that kind of commitment, you are stuck with them, so to speak. You might want to be. You know, that's we'll see how it goes.
Speaking of franchise type players, there was a story from Jeff Passan, who's a reputable national writer, who talking about Bo and his future and how he thinks that he might be better off or he might choose to sign one of those short-term contracts, maybe 3 years with opt-outs after the first two, each of the first 2 years. Do you think that Bo, with a decent season this year, needs to do that, or can he find that marketplace, that niche where he can get the big contract? Not as big as some of the other players that are out there, not as big as Vlad or Soto or Shohei, obviously, but a similar type deal maybe to Dansby Swanson or somebody like that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look back at the trajectory of both players. Yeah, I think if he has a decent season, he definitely can do that. I mean, the body of work over his career is there, and he can make last season look like the blip. You know what I mean? And the injury season, so 100%. But if Bo and Vlad were very, I mean, you could alternate back and forth. I remember the conversation. Everybody wanted Bo, get rid of Vlad in certain seasons, and then last year, keep Vlad, get rid of Bo. Like it just, those guys came up together. They both chose not to sign here. They both chose to not choose those extensions early that were clearly offered several times, but nobody wants to talk about. And they turned them down all along the way. Vladdy has parlayed that into an enormous contract. I mean, you could debate how, even if it makes sense. Bo, in hindsight, with everything that's gone on, may have been wise to sign that 10-year, 200 million-ish type style deal. I don't know what it was, clearly, but when it was offered, he chose to bet on himself, and he might cost himself a few bucks. We don't know, but it is interesting to see how that's the risk, right? On the player side, when you think you're betting on yourself, sometimes it doesn't exactly go the way you want it to, and here you are with this kind of interesting spot he's in. So, which is why I think the best option for Bo, he looks like a player that needs to go away and get out the door and start fresh. It just the vibe, the look. But if he has a good year, he may be fine, but he's not having it yet. That's clear.
Yeah.
It's just there.
I also think that he needs to find another organization because this Blue
Yeah.
Jays organization, they're looking at Arjun Namala maybe 2 years down the road, and they've got a stockpile of middle infielders at the AA and AAA level, so they can fill in until they see what Namala is. But there's no room for Namala and a long-term Bo. So I think that in terms of the next 3 years, when they would be looking at paying Bo big money, that they can fill in and spend that money elsewhere and be better off. So it's been, I mean, a change of scenery is great for a lot of players, and I think Bo is one of those, as you point out. So that would be the direction. I don't think he's going to need a bridge contract of short term. I think that he'll find a market out there.
I do too. And of course the Jays got Gimenez who can fill in at shortstop obviously very adequately for a couple years if need be, right? Defensively. So I'm sure that's something that's in, their back pocket. I mean, they've got him, they're paying him, so it's probably even better if he's over at shortstop. And it's just, yeah, I think for everybody involved, I think it's time for a change, as they say. And talking about presidents, the due dates run out for Bo, and it's just, for everybody's sake, I think there's a better solution out there.
One more thing about the Leafs before we move on to the homestand, but as a PR guy, and I'll ask you, I'll put your PR hat back on. Would you have offered to Brendan Shanahan a chance to meet the media after 9 years in the position rather than just issuing a statement that the club graciously edited and sent out there on his behalf? And I know when he gets his next job, likely with the Islanders, that he will be given an opportunity to address what happened with the Leafs. But I think it would be, my position is it would be better off if he had the opportunity in this market rather than speaking from afar and blasting his former organization. What do you think?
Um, I think again, it depends. And do I think it would be best if he could do it? 100%. If he could sit down and have that send off and present a good image of himself and his time here, yes. But you have to be sure he can do it. And I'm sure the organization's a little snake bitten from the Dubis press conference and how that went down because that was just
Was that here or was that in Pittsburgh?
no, that was here. That was he.
Oh,
If you want to know something about how thin-skinned and how this is my opinion, unprofessional, Dubas still hasn't spoken. He still hid from the media. When he went to Pittsburgh and came back the first time, he still ran and hid. So like that says something. So do I expect Shanahan to do that? No, but you have to be sure that everybody's in the right spot to do that. That would be as a PR guy, that's what you want to see. You want to see this guy come out, do the right thing, thank everybody, move on professionally. But if you have any questions about that, no, you issue the statement and let the temperature, de-escalate, and then everybody on their own time can do that. So my answer, and I mean, you infinitely even more experienced than me on that. My answer is it depends, and I think always you're looking at what you're dealing with. So not being inside and how those conversations went. If Shanny's pissed, man, you're not sending him up there, But I mean, you tell me, what's your thoughts on it?
my history with the Expos betrays my position on this. And it would be that I would have had him available because it's a funny story, but I remember when Buck Rodgers was fired by Dave Dombrowski on an
Right?
off day, a travel day between a homestand and a trip to Houston. So it was the travel day. So early morning, he calls me at home and says, "We're firing Buck. Could you come in?" Well, yeah, I came in early, sent out a statement, but no availability for Buck Rodgers. And Buck Rodgers had the best relationship with media in a city that I can remember of any manager I've ever seen or dealt with.
Wow.
So I felt it was not a good thing to not have Buck available. So I didn't even ask Dombrowski. I called Buck. I said, "Buck, do you want to meet the media?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So I called Grumpy's on Bishop Street, the bar, his favorite bar, where he would
Yeah.
hang out with Larry Bernard, the pitching coach. And I told him to shut it down at noon. We're coming in. We're having a press conference with Buck Rodgers. He's being fired. And so, like, I thought there'd be like 10 people there. And there was like 40 people with the satellite trucks and everything.
No.
I walk in and I go, "Holy shit." And so Buck is there, and the bar tab is open on my American Express card. So everybody's drinking. Buck is giving his. I mean, he was fairly gracious, but I mean, he threw in a couple of. He had a great sense of humor, still does, and he gave in some clever one-liners on Dave Dombrowski and the situation, which probably should have got me fired, but it did.
Yeah.
But so we had to go, the rest of us had to go catch the charter flight to Houston at 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon, whatever it was. And
That must have been fun.
So I went there and I told Larry Bernard to bring my Amex card, close it out, and come. So we get on this flight, and a drunken pitching coach calls the GM an asshole
Oh,
as he's getting on and hands me my card. And
thanks, Griff.
on the flight, on the Dombrowski comes back to me and says, Griff, do you think we should have allowed Buck the opportunity to speak to the media? And I went, yeah, in fact, I did. And he looks at me and he goes, what? I said, yeah, we went to Grumpy's.
We just had a big party
We had a big, and he goes, oh,
on your dime, by the way.
yeah. And he went, oh. So then we get to the hotel in Houston and we get to our rooms and I turn on the TV and there's me directing traffic on ESPN in front of Grumpy's. And I'm going, I'm glad I told Dombrowski because
Oh,
he's probably watching the same thing right now. So that
you're lucky Dombrowski is such a nice human being, actually, because
I have
I can
pictures.
think of a few other GMs who might not have been so kind.
Yeah, no, that was I still laugh to this day. Obviously, I still laugh to this day, and I kept working there, so it all worked out
Did
well.
he have any comments on the following day or anything? Was there?
Well, because Buck, by and large, just took the opportunity to say goodbye to his friends and have a couple more beers on the expos, you know.
Right.
Well, actually, Stoli was his drink of choice on the rocks,
Okay. All right.
so that was all good. Um,
That's outstanding.
the the homestand, the Blue Jays homestand, 5-4 with a three-game sweep. Difficult in the third game, but nevertheless, a three-game sweep of the Padres. And the Padres are always ranked top five in baseball, toughest division. Four teams going to make the playoffs, maybe. Um, but here's my question to you. The Jays play a team loaded with stars in the batting order and shut them out twice and beat them in the final game. Do you believe, and I asked the manager this, I asked John Schneider if his younger players could look at the Padres, struggles to score 0 for 30 at one point with runners in scoring position, and sort of take solace from the fact that they get the same criticism from time to time, but they're looking at a team that has all these star players. Can they feel better about themselves after that series?
Oh, I think you feel great about yourself after that series. I think if there's a message John sending out there is, look, we went into Seattle and swept them when they were riding high. You know what I mean? And then they continued to, Seattle went back to it by beating San Diego, strangely enough. And then, you had a couple of meh series. You lost both series. And then you came out and swept a very good San Diego team. So you're telling people that you're telling your team that we can play with anybody type thing. You guys can hang and compete with the best in the game. So I think that's kind of what you're trying to instill in your team, and that your young guys need to feel that it's all about. I mean, if you can get something out of, make major leaguers out of Addison Barger, you know, Nathan Lucas, like now, can you is the question, but that's what you're kind of trying to see if that's something you have there. You're selling that message. I mean, and why wouldn't you? You didn't, you're not beating, the dregs of the league in a two games to one in a series and then getting handed to you by better teams. You're beating good teams, and that's baseball, Susan, as they say. So I think there's some signs that if I'm the manager of the Blue Jays, I'm really trying to instill in because the young guys are the ones that really need that confidence. So when they start believing that they can belong here, um, that's when maybe you got something. Maybe there is something in there because baseball's a funny game. I mean, you know, progression isn't linear, neither is the regression on guys' careers, and you just never know. I mean, is there a reason to think that Barger and Lucas are major leaguers? I don't know, probably not, but you can't sell a guy short. If he gets his opportunity, that's the beauty of baseball is to see what you have. And those guys are kind of getting it done. and that's changing course for them a little bit right now. I mean, let's see what happens, but um, there's a reason for optimism.
I asked the manager after the game yesterday, and we're recording on early Friday morning, but I asked him after the Thursday game, the day game, um, this question. And you've been in clubhouses for years and years, and you've been on charter flights for years and years. And I asked him, I said, you guys had lost five straight games with a chance to get back over 500. Five straight games at 500. You lost the next game. You haven't been above 500 since April 21st. Do you feel like that plateau of reaching to one game above going on this road trip is significant in any way on the flight going down? What was your feeling whenever something like that happened where you reached a goal that you hadn't been able to attain and now you've done it?
Well, it is. I mean, I know it's just a number, and at the end of the day, it really is. But there is a mental hurdle with that. I mean, you're always trying to get back to that little that magic mark. Right? Look at the Braves. I mean, same thing. They came out of the gate 0 and a billion, and they finally got back to 500. It's just a signifier. Okay, now we're back in contention here. Now we're back. Now we can go. We've got to level. And now we have the ability to move into the upper echelon of the league. So it does have an impact on you from a mental standpoint. I'll guarantee you going on that plane yesterday was the best ride they've had in a long time. I mean, they were feeling good about themselves, and the mood is okay, we're ready to go now. Things are falling in place for us. The roles are falling in place. You don't get there without having guys performing roles that you hoped they could. So, yeah, I think that it definitely always was for us. I'm sure you feel the same way. You're always looking at those indicators that you're headed in the right direction, and 500 was always the one when you were behind it that you're trying to get to and then take the next step. You
Yeah.
know, obviously you can't fall backwards, but then it's the next step.
Yeah, there's nothing better on a travel day from the clubhouse onto the buses, onto the plane for the duration of the flight. There's nothing better than a sweep or reaching a mark and just the change in attitude on the flight. And it carries over to the next series. And you know, I know that they always struggle and have difficulty in Tampa. Or we call it Tampa now instead of St. Pete because
Yeah.
actually playing games in Tampa, but they always have trouble there. And here's another question to you. Why do you think they have trouble specifically in Tampa? And my theory is that there's too many players that live in the area, go home, and try and stay home as long as they can, go to the ballpark as late as possible, and then they get back together with their teammates. And it's not like a real road trip.
Yeah, I disagree with that one. I think that happens with a lot of teams, and they don't struggle in Tampa. Um, I think they've always struggled maybe with the style of baseballs Tampa always has played. Um, the Jays didn't struggle in Tampa when they were really good in 15 and 16 all of a sudden. I mean, there was horror shows. I remember standing in the bowels of the stadium and you could hear the roar of the crowd before you could see it on the television. You knew doom was impending, and it was just like it was just the memory you'll never forget being there because it was always something that would happen. So I hear you. They have always had that bugaboo there. Um, I'm not sure I recall players coming into this locker room late though. Everybody was
I
there to
mean,
win still.
not late, but
Lot more distractions, sure.
yeah.
Um, yeah, guys, it was always the place where everybody on the disabled list showed up and caught up with their teammates. So the locker room had like 50 guys in it because there's always a million guys in Dunedin rehabbing. Um, I
The
just
guys
think
with a
it's just
pipe and a drum. Yeah.
you played them a lot, and they've been a pretty scrappy team. And I don't know if the Jays were you know, when they were trying to become relevant again, were as good. You know, that's just my opinion. I don't think it's got anything to do with that outside of distractions. Like I said, when 15 kind of broke that curse and beat the heck out of them there, so that was fun.
The on the last homestand, the just completed homestand, They began the stand with a series against the Rays, and they were 1-2 in that series, then 1-2 against the Tigers, and turned it all around with that three game sweep of the Padres. But I mean, when you say the way the Rays play, they're still playing that way. They got little outfielders who slap the ball around and run like hell. They got a deep bullpen of guys that were washouts in other organizations, and they still play. And Kevin Cash is inherited a lot of the Joe Madden, and it's what happens when you have to play on a small budget like that. But do you think that playing in a minor and the Jays played in a minor league ballpark, they played at TD ballpark, whatever it's called, in Dunedin. Do you think that's going to make a difference in this series playing at Steinbrenner Field? They're very familiar with it from spring training games, but what do you think about how that changes the dynamic of a Rays Blue Jays series?
Yeah, I think, um, guys guys who can hit the ball in the ballpark are probably starting to salivate going here, right? It's a little it plays smaller. It's a minor league park. And I mean, the dimensions are fine. It's the heat, right? The ball carries better there, from what I'm gathering. So if I'm guys like Vladdy and even a guy like who's going well, or if Santander is in the lineup, man, I'm starting to think I can get healthy here, especially guys like that, or even Varsho, Lucas, those lefty hitters trying to pull the ball to right field. I think it should play different, and I think, to be honest with you, the Rays do play the same way. I just don't think they play it quite as well. They're just not as good as they've been before. So I shouldn't think there's any reason the Jays can't go in there and have the same attitude they left Toronto with, and you just keep rolling. But if I'm a lefty hitter right now, I'm looking forward to this. That's for sure.
I asked Schneider pregame on Thursday if he thought, speaking of Steinbrenner Field and the Rays taking over there, I asked him if he thought that the Yankees left all their listening devices in the coach's room for the Rays to use, or whether they took them with them. And he,
Yeah.
he said, "I'm not sure,
Yeah.
not sure that relationship." But that's the theory: is that the Yankees are
Yes.
tremendously in all phases of the game, and that's why we hate them.
That's why we hate them.
The IL with Santander, he didn't even sniff grabbing a bat on Thursday, which makes you and game went 11 innings, which makes you believe that they're considering putting him on the IL at some point, and they would be able to backdate it 10 days. And with Lucas stepping up and with all the options that they have in the outfield right now, they had six primary outfielders on the 26-man roster, so 13 position players. Do you think that this would be a great time to put Santander on the IL? He hit a grand slam, or he hit a big home run the other day, and that has him in a good frame of mind. But they're down in Tampa. He's got a chance to get worked on with his hip and shoulder. Do you think this would be a good opportunity?
Feels like it, doesn't it? I mean, this thing keeps nagging. I'm sure they've, I mean, clearly they tried to just massage him through, literally and figuratively. Um, and he himself says he's not 100% right. So, yeah, you've got the luxury of doing it right now if you wanted to. So, I mean, if that is in a situation that you think 10 days rest will help, it makes all the sense in the world. And I think what you said is the indicator that they are thinking of it is the fact that he didn't get in there yesterday.
Yeah,
So,
probably didn't even take off his jacket.
yeah. So what's the point? Like it's not like what's the point? You've tried the old day off, give it a rest, get him in there, and it doesn't appear to be working. So you do have that luxury right now. Lucas is going well, and you've got outfielders. So, if this is the thing you think 10 days can handle, I would do it. Just makes a lot of sense. I'm sure you agree. Just seems the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, you backdate a couple days, and you got 8 days with Lucas swinging the bat well. with well, Springer, we agree. Springer is sort of his season arc is on the way down towards what he showed the last 2 years. I mean, at one point he was 1 for 19. I'm not sure what it is right now, but if you wait much longer, then that opportunity is not going to be there. And I don't know what you think about the Springer situation, but I think something that was working early in the season isn't working now, obviously. But what's your view on whether he is sliding back to where he was?
Well, sure. I mean, I don't think anybody expected him to stay the person he was in April, but pleasantly surprised. I just think the player is what the player is, and I think if you're going to go anywhere, he is going to be a part of it. I think you're still hoping Springer, he's going to go through these stretches. Um, he isn't, the 5 years ago Springer, but I still think he can contribute, and I think he's shown he can contribute. So, um, yeah, you know what? As he ages, maybe you find more rest for him, and just to make sure he's always fresh. You do have some options, like you say. Maybe not if Santander's on the IL, but if you've got a full complement of guys, you do have a few options. It looks like at least, and maybe giving Springer some more time off is a wise move, just to keep him as absolutely fresh as you can. Because I think in the key moments, he's unfortunately, or whatever, he's in the middle of your lineup. Let's face it, this isn't a lineup that's going to scare anybody, no matter who's going well. So Springer's going to be in the middle of it. Well, that's just the way it is. So keeping him fresh is probably the right idea. So
Meanwhile, Andres Gimenez, who is making a lot of money and is going to be making a lot of money down the line for the Blue Jays, it was asked of John Schneider what was going to happen when he gets healthy. And right now he's doing baseball activities, which, you
I
know,
don't understand
but
that.
yeah.
Never did.
But he will be back at some point, maybe at the end of this road trip, maybe before, because he is traveling with the team. And Schneider was asked what happens then to Barger and Ernie Clement, who are doing a good job, and the team has responded and is playing well and is, back above 500, as we said. And I 100% agree with Schneider's response.
What do you say?
He said that Jimenez has to play when he's healthy. He has
Yep.
to play, and it will allow him to have Barger and Clement playing third base, whatever situations, and maybe against a tough left-hander, Clement can go back to second base, and Jimenez would get a rest. But it would allow, basically, he's saying, a platoon at third base with Clement and Barger, which, if you remember, exit philosophy was
I do remember.
testing before the season as they were coming out of spring training that this would be the optimum because Ernie Clement is a better player coming off the bench and filling in at shortstop, which he hasn't had to. I think twice he started at short, but second base, third base, and shortstop, and would headline a much stronger bench if that was his role.
Yeah, I think that's 100%. I mean, there isn't a world where I don't have Jimenez playing second base. That's why he's there. The fortunate thing is that's exactly what you want when a guy goes down, is having a guy like Clement and Barger able to bridge those types of things and give you, a competent time to fill in. You don't want those guys running through the season. That's not the role. But you want guys that can fill in a pinch and get you by for a couple of weeks. And that's exactly what they've done. When Jimenez comes back, Ernie hits the bench, man. And hey, if you want to talk about a platoon, I'm not so sure I'm totally in on that. I mean, I think Barger's the type of guy, the way it looks and what he brings to the table, is you've got to run with this guy. And I'm not saying he needs to sit against every lefty. And I get it. Maybe he does, but he's got to be in there every day against a righty. That's for sure. You need to run with him. And Ernie fits in where he fits in, and that's his role. And I think you see that he can handle that role, and he brings solid defense. some timely hitting, that type of thing. But Ernie goes to the bench, man. And
Yeah.
your bench is better for it, and your team's better for it. And you go, thank you very much for playing as much as you did when we needed to, and you know he can do it.
I mean, we've seen over the years players that look so good when they fill in off the bench, and then you let them play every day. And it hasn't happened with Ernie Clement, but you see, they reach the statute of their limitations.
Yeah.
And you see that when you override a guy who's really a bench player, that's what happens. But Clement, in that role, as described by John Schneider, would be much more than just a regular bench player. He would get a lot of playing time. He would probably end up with 450 at bats.
Well, and then, I mean, again, like I said, I want to maximize, I want to see what Barger does, but he certainly doesn't hit lefties well. So that Clement's going to get in there for sure. And like you say, I think that's the role for Ernie. You've seen it like Santiago Espinal, just your case in point. There's a role for certain guys and you can't overexpose them or they get overexposed. And I think Ernie probably is kind of like that, and he brings value in other ways. He's just not a bat off the bench or something. He's a well-rounded player who can handle the bat a little bit when you need a big at bat in a game. So I think that sets up better for their bench than they've been in a very, very, very long time. They've had a terrible bench for many years.
Yeah,
This is better.
which is amazing that we both agree on this, given that Ernie Clement is a graduate of Albany of the Perfect Game Summer Collegiate League, of which
That's right.
Niagara Ironbacks are now members.
Producing bench players all over the league.
Good put. The Blue Jays bullpen. We saw Jeff Hoffman come in and again give up a big home run that tied the game, and they eventually won. So, that's something to take into consideration. But from the seventh to the ninth, with the starting pitchers consistently going 6 innings, like the top three starters, not Bowden Francis, who's struggling to keep the ball in the ballpark, but
Hmm.
when you have guys going 6 innings and now you're handing the seventh to the ninth to your bullpen, John Schneider now has Hoffman, Jimmy Garcia, Wyrod, Little, Chad Green, and Fluharty. Six guys that can handle that role. How much of an advantage and how much does it help the bullpen, Mal, to have starters carrying you through six?
Again, I mean, we could talk about this all day, and we have even coming into the season. When everybody's doing the job you expect and guys fit into a role, it changes the entire landscape of how your pitching staff looks. And that's when you get on these winning streaks, right? I mean, your starters give you six, and then all of a sudden, Wyrod's starting to fit into a role, looking dominant, you suspect what's possible. Chad Green, nobody's overexposed or overextended into a role. And the domino effects, it's just all about those domino effects of everybody needs to do something that they're not set up to do, and the whole thing implodes. And that's when it can go sideways. So if you're looking at why they're winning, that's why. Their starters are doing what you want, and your bullpen guys are stepping up. Like Wyrod has stepped up. Green has done well. I mean, Little's been fantastic, and it just everybody's doing what they have to do, and all of a sudden you're like you have confidence in everybody in that bullpen. Where a little while ago you didn't have confidence in almost anybody other than even Jimmy blew up a little bit. So Brendan Littles might be the only guy who didn't really blow up, so to speak. But you feel so good about the roles they're in because everybody's in the roles they're supposed to be.
Yeah, and there is room for if you want to bring Nick Sandlin in or whatever, because Urania and Braden Fisher are the last two guys. So there's room to enhance that bullpen. But the top six that we listed off are all doing a job, and you would trust them in the seventh to the ninth inning, which means that you're deep enough that if a starter only goes four, like like Bowden Francis did, that you're able to fill to the seventh and then get into your big boys.
Yeah, you just can't do that 3 days in a row.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah. And then when
you
you have three starters carrying you through six, then you don't need to do it 3 days in.
yeah, you have one to give, so to speak, right? You can
So,
get through a day like that.
so the question then is, you go into a game, your pitching coach and your manager go into a game with a plan on how to use their bullpen if they get in a situation with a lead in the seventh and beyond. And on Thursday, the game that went 11 innings, they got to the eighth inning, handed the ball to Jimmy Garcia, and he threw nine pitches. And then they went to their closer, Jeff Hoffman, who got two outs, gave up a two-run homer to tie the game. Would you, and the second guessers go, well, Jimmy Garcia only threw nine pitches. Why not have him pitch the ninth? What's your answer to those people who say he should have been in there?
No, your closer's your closer, and I've mentioned this to you before, but this is not fantasy baseball. Um, how you manage the human beings in this bullpen and their roles is everything. Now, if Hoffman continues to give it up, over an extended period of time, and I know perhaps the conversation might be had in the back room right now, but you don't change somebody's role on the fly because of us. The guy only threw you. What you're saying is we'd rather have Jimmy in that role than you, and he only threw nine pitches, so we don't trust you as much. That has devastating effects on the mental part of the game. And I think it's important that Hoffman knows he's the closer because you're playing the long game here. You're not winning anything without Jeff Hoffman as your closer. And if you make that move, it's a last resort. You're like, this guy can't get it done. We're done with that. Jimmy's the closer, and we're gonna have to figure out a new way to attack this from the ground up. Um, Hoffman's your closer. He's getting the ball, and he's getting the ball tonight too, if he's fresh or whenever the next time is. And you keep doing that until you're convinced he can't handle the role, and then you sit people down and talk about the role change so everybody knows what it is. You just don't go, oh, looks good tonight. Let's just keep rolling with it. We don't have guys in specific roles because we know that's not the truth. And it has an impact on the whole season. You're playing the long game. They don't go anywhere without Hoffman closing games. So that's my opinion. So you got it. It would be disrespectful, and that matters.
Uh, to me, I agree with you on the principle. Nothing in baseball snowballs like a short start and having to put your bullpen into situations that they weren't set up to succeed in. You have to put pitchers, you have to put players in a position to succeed. So when the starter only goes 3 innings, now you're putting guys in roles in situations against hitters that they weren't set up matchup wise to succeed. And not only does 6 inning starts from your top three guys give you a shortened uh, game situation to put your best relievers in, but it also allows you to use what Pete Walker and John Schneider have set up for how we're going to handle late innings. And like you said, you can't improvise and say, "Oh, 9 pitches. Okay, Jimmy, you're going back out there," because not only is Jimmy not expecting that, but Hoffman has been warming up and now goes, "Oh shit, they don't trust me. They don't like what I'm doing, and I'm in trouble. I better overthrow next start, whatever." But as long as he's healthy, as long as everyone is healthy and the medical staff is paying very close attention to these guys, then he's got to be the guy. There's no doubt.
Yep. Yep. I agree.
Um, it was pointed out that the rotation, and we've just been praising them for going six or more innings. The last 28 games, last 29 games, they're 4-10, the starting pitchers. Now, wins
Yeah.
have been dismissed, and especially when guys are only going 5 innings. Now you're giving 4 innings to your bullpen. to preserve a 1 run or a 2 run lead. Otherwise, a guy in the sixth can get a blown save, which I disagree with. I mean, blown saves should be eighth or ninth inning. But 4-10 for their rotation in the last 29 games. Um, 9-5 in the first 20. Do you see that 4-10? Like, how do you explain that when we just said how much better, how much deeper into games the rotation is going? Is that the offense that's to blame for the starters 4-10 record?
Yeah, I would think again, like you say, they're not going 8 innings, the starters anymore, 7, 8 innings. So most of the games are in the hands of the bullpen. And the Jays haven't scored until recently, and you're not exactly getting ahead early. So they're not scoring a ton of runs. So you're just going to find that the games end up in the hands of the bullpen. So the Jays would be behind in a game, and starters getting a loss, I guess. And there was a stretch there where they weren't putting a lot of runs on the board and obviously getting back to even. So, I mean, I just wouldn't look at it. I'd look at whether or not their ERAs are solid, and I think they've been getting some good outings they're getting what they're supposed to be getting out of the top three guys. The question is, it's like we just said, because they went through this part of the rotation, Griff, and here we're on a win streak. Okay. Bowden survived yesterday. But again, so now your bullpen, you got 4 innings out of him. So what do you get out of Eric Lauer tonight? Let's say you don't get those innings out of him. Now it's that domino effect. Now you're really relying on getting something out of, Gosman coming around again. If one of those guys has a bad outing, oops, now the bullpen's all messed up from 3 days in a row, right? So those, as far as the rotation goes, I think they're getting everything they can get out of those top three guys, and that's been fine. Bowden hasn't been good at all, and you're really trying to piece together that fifth guy right now. And let's see if Lauer is the guy to do it.
So and I was just going to get to that point, is um, you've got Eric Lauer as the fifth guy, and Bowden Francis, who doesn't seem able to keep the ball in the ballpark consistently. 15 home runs he's allowed in however many starts. He's made 12, I think, 11 or 12. But like your fourth and fifth guys need some help, need some work, need improvement. Eric Lauer, we're not sure of. You see Max Scherzer wandering around the clubhouse, the field. He has 3 innings of work as a 15.5 million third starter, and he doesn't look like he is even thinking about coming back before September or ever.
Or after the All-Star break or something.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he just, he just shrugs a lot about when he's going to be ready to go. So you're going to need a fourth and fifth guys. You can't compete when 40% of your rotation is like a coin flip every day. And Eric Lauer had a good outing, but people will catch up with him. They didn't have a lot of video from Korea or wherever he was, Chinese Taipei, whatever. So that is going to be a continuing concern. And as you point out, that puts a lot more pressure on your top three starters to perform. Spencer Turnbull, who was signed along with Jose Urena, he's pitching in Florida. I think he's been in the complex league for 3 starts. His last one, not so good, but you don't put any stock in the numbers that come out of those starts.
Right.
Spencer Turnbull is probably the next man up. Adam Mako, who was hurt, is back pitching, but he's never proven anything, even at AAA. Adam Kloffenstein probably is after Spencer Turnbull and Eric Lauer on the depth chart. He's pitching again, but like I wouldn't trust him to be a made part of a major league team that you're hoping will go to the postseason as a wild card. But they're going to be stuck. They might need to reach out at the trade deadline rather than just looking around for free agents that are available. You might need to find somebody who's already pitching.
Well, and that's we talked about on the last podcast. You've got three solid starters. If you're in this thing, that is what you're looking for. You are looking for a big time starter to come in at the deadline. And then, like I said last time, maybe Manoa fills in, you know, just gives you that extra piece where you've got a surprise addition in that role as well. And your rotation is certainly more playoff ready or stretch run ready. If you add that starter, but you got to add it. There's no question about it. So you can't if you're going to make a run at this thing, you're going to have to add a starter at the deadline, and you have to be in contention at the deadline. So that's the thing. So we'll see what they do because you can't just ride along with what you have because this is not going to suffice.
Couple of things, a couple of more things here. Team wise, you all it takes, and we know this for a fact, all it takes is a winning streak to make everything right again. You could be struggling, you could be playing pickleball with 500 and all of a sudden you put together a winning streak like the Minnesota Twins did. And there's some teams that we thought that everybody thought were going to be better before the season who struggled early. And I'm thinking of the Twins, the Cardinals, the
Hmm.
Braves, who were under 500 for a while, and they haven't put together a significant win streak, but they've been winning a lot.
Yeah.
And even the Rangers and the Mariners who have taken off in the AL West. Um, is that all it takes? Like the Twins, I mean, on exit philosophy, we had all these teams ranked higher, and so we're right again.
That's right. We have everybody pegged correctly.
But is the Twins an example of how it just takes 2 weeks and all of a sudden everything can seem right?
Well, and in this day and age of the game, Griff, that so many teams are bunched together. That's the way the game's designed. There's a lot of mediocrity by design in the game. So you can flounder for a bit and then you get hot and all of a sudden, you're 5 games above 500 and in first place. So yeah, baseball's a long season. We make a lot of, you know, uh, we make a lot of, judgments on small sample sizes in this game, and we know like coming out of the gate, it's fresh, it's new, it's a 6 month grind. So, if you have put a team together, generally you find your level. It's the old Lupinella saying. I don't care if the guy's hitting 300 in May. If 250 hitter's a 250 hitter, he's going to find his way to the level he's at. And yeah, you got to kind of let it ride out. Now, obviously, it's different when it comes to teams and injuries, and certain things can take on a different life of their own with a team along the way. But yeah, teams usually find their level, and in 2 weeks can change everything. And we've seen that with these guys, with the Twins getting to where they are, and the Cardinals maybe go the other way. Let's see, they're 5 games up, and give them
It,
2 weeks.
It's funny because I do on griffsthepitch.com, I do a power rankings of Major League Baseball every couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Some teams, like I've got in the 20s, and all of a sudden I've got them up to number 12 2 weeks later. And like you've always maintained, you can't do power rankings just based on the standings. You have to dig deeper and see what's there and what is going to emerge over the
right.
course of the marathon. I mean, if you bet against the Kenyans in every marathon because they were in the back of the pack after 12 miles, you'd lose all your money, you know?
That's
You guys
right.
have a finishing kick like the Minnesota Twins are
You,
showing.
you got to do a little more research on what's in the bullpen, so to speak.
And
What's coming?
the
But
Twins
there's
were
no
10
question. Like,
years
why are they playing well?
yeah.
Why are they playing well, right? Yeah, you go dig a little deeper, man.
For the Twins, I mean, you got a really good bullpen, hard throwers based around a great closer. You got Byron Buxton, who's playing well. Correa, even though the two of them collided and got concussed for 7 days, but you got players there who should be better than what they showed early in the season. And the rotation is good and hard throwing and young. And so there's a team that over 162 games is going to turn it around. Now we're not so sure about the Blue Jays because they sort of fit into a
But
mishmash of that.
yeah, but that's aren't they doing exactly what they thought we thought they would do? That I think they're going to be right here. I think they're going to be chasing 500 most of the season, sitting around it, a few games under. This is exactly what you kind of expect when coming into the season. I don't expect them to get to 5 and 6 and 7 games over 500. I don't think the bullets are there. I also don't expect them to be 10 games under 500 at some point, unless, the wheels fall off and you start moving pieces to live to fight another day and change your course. I think this is exactly where you expect them to be. And you enjoy watching baseball each and every day, and you're going to get these runs where you feel like they're going to win seven in a row, and maybe they do, because everything's flowing right now. And maybe next week we talk and we go, man, they lost four in a row. Like I think the Jays are just right where we expect them to be, and they're just there.
And a couple more items here. The Phillies. The Phillies are
Yeah.
all of a sudden at the top of the division. A big media market, that like a critical fan base, who buried Jordan Romano earlier in the season. Jordan Romano is now sort of his role is back up there because their closer Jose Alvarado was suspended 80 games for PED use, and Romano has 8 shutout appearances in a row.
Yeah,
And
he's been great.
yeah, he's been great.
Yeah.
So, like, is that a case of sticking with it, sticking with a guy, and can he be a closer for a championship team?
Jury's out. Sure he can. I mean, Romano's got the stuff. I mean, it's just whether that stuff is still there on an everyday basis, no doubter type thing. Would they be wise to add somebody? For sure. Again, you're riding a thin line if you just say we're going to go with Jordan. But if you look at what he's been doing, I mean, he's been great for the last, he looks like he's putting it together again. So you have that. Should they go out and get somebody? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. You're trying to win it all.
David Robertson is still available as a free agent. He's got closing experience. I'm not sure at this stage of his career he's better than Romano, but he could be like the Jimmy Garcia of that bullpen, closing some games if they're winning two or three in a row, or setting them up with an eighth inning performance. They're talking about Bednar and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh looks like they're ready at the trade deadline to get rid of everybody. Um, and how about Chad Green? Chad Green might fit in there if the right fit comes.
Well, what about Felix Batista? Baltimore looks like
Yeah,
it's dead
that
in the water when
Baltimore
they don't need
situation,
him.
yeah, that Baltimore situation is crazy.
And
I think,
isn't he on the last year of his deal, Batista? So I mean, that's prime.
yeah.
I mean, prime blow it up territory. So there's guys they can go get, and most certain they'll find one. They're too good not to let that happen. And they're trying to win a World Series, so they'll add somebody. It's just what kind of guy do they add for sure?
And with the Phillies, one more thing. Kyle Schwarber hit his 300th career homer the other day. And there's nobody who's more clutch than Kyle Schwarber at this stage of the Major League season. But I've been against DHs being considered or being the MVP. Are you a Kyle Schwarber MVP supporter? Could you support that?
Shit, no. I mean, I'm, and look, Kyle Schwarber to me, well, obviously very good at what he does, represents the modern day baseball player game. We've sold out to the sameness all over the game. There's very little personality and character in our players anymore because a Kyle Schwarber type is the most efficient player. When Schwarbers were like in the 70s, 80s, like there was one guy in the league kind of like swing out his ass, take a lot of walks, hit a bunch of homers. So is Schwarber the best at that type of thing? For sure. Is it a very appealing way to play baseball? Absolutely not. No way would I vote for him for MVP. That's just, I mean, maybe 10th, ninth or 10th. I don't know how you feel, but I just, it's kind of the thing that represents what I don't necessarily like about the way the game's played this day is the Kyle Schwarbers.
Well, the thing I have, and we've talked about it, the thing I have against DHs over the years is that, like, you pay 100 and some dollars to sit near the field, and your best player that you came to see, you only see 5 times when they step out of the dugout to hit. That's the only time they emerge from the dugout is when they come out to hit. And if they run the bases twice, you see them there. To me, that is the difference. That's a separator between watching some baseball players and an NBA game where these guys are out there 36 out of 48 minutes and you see them and you know them and there's only 5 players on the court at a time. And that's a weakness that baseball has with its star players.
100%. I mean, look at Rafael Devers, man. You're paying him a lot of money to watch him sit in the dugout, or not even that, sits in the clubhouse all night.
They mopes.
And mopes, well, for sure. Different story. But yeah, again, I agree with you. And it's the style of baseball. I just don't, it's not for me. So I'd like to see the game change and guys like Schwarber not be near as valuable. And you actually have to be a baseball player to be effective, not just, a behemoth.
Here's before we get to our top 5 list and wrap it up. Here's a question I know the answer to. I will ask you anyway. Are you a fan of minor leagues, Class A, and their check swing challenge camera that they're now instituting?
You probably know my answer. I mean, I hate technology in all sports. I think it's made it worse. I don't think we need to be right. And how can you have it? How can you, what are you looking at? What is a check swing? I mean, that's the one thing we got to leave to the umpire's discretion, man, because I don't even know if there's the right way to call that on video.
Yeah,
Like it's
they said the definition 45-degree angle somewhere, but and then they showed the overhead camera, which is going to be the judge and jury. But I agree with you. It's like ridiculous. Let's get
Can
over.
we just not play the game? Let the guy call it. Move on. If his guy's wrong, he's wrong. It's like we pursue, we do the best we can out there, but it doesn't, the beauty and the flow of the game is far more important than determining if one call is incorrect or not incorrect. Move along, people. Deal with the adversity. Play baseball. I don't need more reviews.
Amen. Top 5 list. Now, this is a
Oh,
question that has layers. The top 5 MLB position players who were born in the 80s. So baseball is clearly getting to be a young man's game. So if you're born in the 80s, you're 35.4
oof.
years old, um, or older. So top 5 play, and the issue here is that Vlad Guerrero Jr. is under contract until he's 39 years old. So he'll be
Yeah.
4 or 5 years into this list. And we were looking at the 19, there's only 19 position players among 30 teams that were born in the 80s, which proves that this is getting to be a young man's game because they used to say that you're entering your prime, that you're in your prime from 28 to 32 years old, and that's no longer the case. Um, so top 5 players, we won't give you the 19. We'll just give you our top 5. You start with number 5 on your list, and I'll give you my number 5. But it's a not a very good list.
Well, this says something about how people age, right? So, um, and oof, okay, number 5 for me is, I guess it's Carlos Santana, who I felt was kind of done a long time ago, and I'm shocked he's still getting contracts. Now, he's relatively competent with the bat because he's a smart hitter. So those skills of having a great judge of the strike zone take you a long way into your career. And anybody who keeps playing a long time generally becomes a really smart hitter, even though there's everywhere else they can't play the game as well as they used to. But if you can still hit, he's still kind of an above average hitter in this day and age, which is amazing. So I got him at number five for guys maybe moving forward, but not for long.
My number five is George Springer. These are players born in the 80s, position players. And we discussed George earlier and how even though he went off to the Jackrabbit start, that his numbers are coming back down to earth. And he still plays defense well. He's clearly they made a good decision taking him out of the leadoff spot. But I would have him definitely, I wouldn't bat him clean up. Uh, I would bat him sixth in the order, but he's my number five. My number four is Carlos Santana. He's still, I think he won a Gold Glove last year or the year
Yeah,
before.
please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's a popularity vote in clubhouses and wherever.
Vladdy won one once. Give me a
Yeah.
break. Oh my God.
Uh, but that was sponsored by Teflon.
But well, and it's not. I mean, can somebody teach Vladdy when to stretch, how to stretch, and what the right way?
It
Holy
looks
God,
good. It
dude.
looks good when he makes the play, but like
Well,
that
yeah.
ball that bounced up to his face when he stretched out, he didn't need to do that.
What was it? It's all the time. What was it, Mike Palmateer out there? Jesus.
So that's my number four. Who's your number four?
My number four, George Springer. I still think there's some upside from a power perspective that some other guys don't have. So, I mean, just same stuff you said. Number three for me is Andrew McCutchen. I mean, we're we're on the downside, but he's still playing, competing, and like you say, it gets pretty thin at this age, and I'm surprised he's still around too. But that just goes to show you what a great athletic player he was throughout his career. So, what do you got for three?
My number three was Giancarlo Stanton, who has seemed to be more injury prone than he was as Mike Stanton, but we can forgive that. But he's still a physical specimen who, when he's healthy, is a threat at the plate. I mean, he's got a lot of Mark McGuire in him, where his technique isn't that great, but he's so strong he can overpower a ball when he hits it. And 30, born in the 80s. It's a thin group as you're seeing, listening to this. My number two is Paul Goldschmidt. Um, you know, he wasn't that sought after as a free agent, but
No.
doing fine this year. And it just shows you the weakness of that group of 35 plus players.
Well, and again, like I said earlier, if you are a smart hitter, that extends your career. And the guys at the top are obviously smart hitters. I actually didn't have Stanton on my list, just outside, and the only reason is if he does play again, clearly, the power is something else. I'm not. He may not. Like you may not see him. So that I just kept him off my list. But for me, Goldschmidt's my number two. Same reason, and I think the clear number one, probably for you too, is Freddie Freeman, who just continues to be an incredible hitter. Just the guy knows how to hit. It's unbelievable what he's doing.
Yeah, Canada produces a lot of great first basemen.
Yeah, that's right. Apparently
Oh,
so.
Team
Apparently.
Canada.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, Freddie Freeman, number one on the list. I didn't have McCutcheon on because I thought he was brought back to Pittsburgh more as a
yeah.
iconic player, right, being brought back to finish his career rather than a producer of numbers. So um, now we'll conclude with the weekly Ironbacks update. Tickets, where can people purchase them? I know that the road opener is June 5th in Jamestown. And I was talking to Joe Siddle, and Joe Siddle said that home plate, I should bring our catcher to home plate because that was where Joe Siddle's first professional game was.
No way.
Yeah, so
Well, we are
Joe,
going to do that. We
yeah.
will definitely do that. That is a very cool thing. I
Yeah.
did not realize
And
that.
then June 7th, the home opener. And you can talk about that a little bit, Mal.
Yeah, and again, ironbacks.ca for all your ticketing needs. Obviously, we're in year one, so we just want to showcase what is coming in many years to come with the quality of the product that we have. So we're quite excited about it, and We are feverishly getting ready. We are basically 2 weeks away from that home opener. Um, Lots to do to just get our ducks in a row from an organizational standpoint, but also very excited to get going. And if you follow us on socials, please do. You'll see all the announcements on player signings that are coming and special announcements like the video that we had from Schneider and Ernie Clement. We got another fun one in the hopper for people, and we've been doing some media on locally here and on the Jays broadcast. So we're trying to get the word out. So come see me and Griff at the ballpark. We will always be happy to engage with everyone there and trying to build something unique and special as the years go by, and it's going to all start June 7th. So come on out, folks. We want to see you.
Thanks, Mel. And just a reminder to subscribers to like, review, share Exit Philosophy on YouTube if you're watching, and Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, very important that you do those things. And we're thrilled to keep doing this. And we will be back next week. And I appreciate it, Mal. I appreciate everyone for listening.